Hello everyone, this is Guy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out on more interesting stories. Settle in and get comfortable, because we're starting now. Jillian couldn't seem to tear her shiny green eyes away from the cheap snow globe with the lit up blue jellyfish inside. Funny thing was, the reason she couldn't shift her eyes came from the same reason they were shiny with tears that were threatening to fall. Hell, no threaten about it, they were coming, and coming soon. A sigh, then a deep, regretful mutter finally broke the silence of too many minutes. Jelly. That did it. At hearing the nickname from him that she'd tried to quash years before, a sob escaped Jillian's lips before she sealed them shut, but that was more than enough to humiliate her, and she reached out to snatch up the snow globe with both hands and clutch it to her chest. Can I take this back? She still wouldn't look at Bash, but she could see his face anyway. It wasn't hard to fill in the blanks with the avalanche of memories available to her after a dozen years. His pale blue eyes were crinkled at the corners because he was frustrated, that one line across his forehead would appear because he was concerned, the left side of his mouth was up higher than the right because he was about to. Possession is 9/10 of the law, but the law won. Say something so goofy that it would force her to stop getting all worked up and try to figure out what the hell it even meant. Well, not this time. I gave it to you after that class trip, so if you're going to get me expelled, or whatever, then I want to keep it. There, that was enough. Jillian had no desire to explain why she wanted to keep the dumb tchotchke and embarrass herself even more. He was just a guidance counselor, not her. He was just a guidance counselor. Damn it. Jelly, sorry. Miss Draven. Why on the planet would you think you're going to be expelled? When she didn't answer, he stood to his full 6-foot height and took a few steps, but only a few. Is it because you got caught with some weed? Another couple steps. Is it because you pushed that girl in the hallway last week? Closer, closer. Or is it because you called Principal Kowalski what was it? Rancid cunt? Jillian hugged the snow globe tighter before she answered. It was all she could think to do. All of the above. It all came out, I guess. Right? It's too much to ignore, right? Even you can't smooth this. It was the big mitt coming down on her shoulder and squeezing that shut her up even before Bash began answering his own questions. Jelly. No more Miss Draven, apparently. We don't expel for an ounce of weed. If we did, the 5 kids we have left would get pretty lonely. He chuckled at himself then, and it was all she could do not to reflexively respond in kind. And at least a dozen other students saw Christie Park try to hip-check you into the wall before you turned the tables on her. He paused for dramatic effect then. And Principal Kowalski is a rancid cunt, though that one you probably should have kept under your hat. He sighed then, but gave her shoulder one more squeeze before he went back to his chair. So, a week's suspension. He held out a very official-looking slip of paper, waving it under her downcast eyes. Jillian finally looked up then and stared at him. Like every other time, she guessed she could see why most the girls in their K-12 academy had crushes on him. The thick, dark hair, the bronze eyes, the muscles, the chin, whatever. To her, though, he was just Bash. He was the big guy behind that scuffed and dinged desk ever since forever. She could still remember laughing at one of his bad puns during orientation on her first day of school when she was 6. The kaleidoscope of memories of sitting right in this spot more times than she could possibly count didn't include a single second of mooning after him like some flighty little girl. He was more than that. Better than that. He was the light at the end of a dark tunnel that stretched for miles, and she couldn't deny it, no matter how guilty she felt. No matter how many times she tried to convince herself that he was just a guidance counselor. Oh, weeks. She just shook her head. Bash, how the hell? I went fucking nuts. Language. He snorted. And you don't know what going nuts even looks like. Trust me. He tapped the cleft in his chin then. Sorry, Jelly, but you're going to have to try harder to find an excuse why you can't go to any of those colleges you got accepted to. Bash gave a rolling, exaggerated shrug of his wide shoulders. In fact, I'm thinking that maybe there isn't one, and you'll just have to get an education and a future and all that. Jillian glanced away guiltily. Shit, am I that obvious? After a second she sighed, then nearly grinned before she caught herself. No, she wasn't. No one else seemed to catch on, just Bash. Just the man who'd never stopped holding her hand for the last 12 years. Of course he'd seen right through her. That dumb smile came back again. We can't pay for it. Jillian shook her head. It's easier if I give them an excuse. Bash snorted. Did you forget what year it is? No one can pay for college. Jillian rolled her eyes. Okay, but who wants to be in debt forever? Bash snorted. Again. He did that a lot. Don't be a social art philosophy history major. He tapped a file on his desk that she knew was hers. We both know you have options. I don't want to leave you behind. Nope. Not in a million years could Jillian say something so cringingly childish out loud. Instead, she settled for second place, which was its own kind of depressing. My mom and dad, they kinda need me around. Kinda really need me around. Maybe they could. I dunno, talk to you? Weirdly, that did make Bash pause. His silence was so unusual that Jillian actually frowned in confusion, ready to say something. The counselor took a deep breath then and shook his head. Jelly, you can't worry about them. They're mistakes. He came back around and put his hand on her shoulder again. You have to do what's best for yourself. He grinned. The rest will work itself out. No one needs me to make that happen. Jillian could almost believe him if it wasn't for the fakest smile she'd ever seen. What the hell is that about? She didn't like it. It was almost like he was lying to her, and he never lied to her. She knew it. Bash? She blinked. What could she say? What are you hiding from me? What was the answer, that everything wouldn't work out? Jillian was suddenly lost. Is everything okay? It was the best she had right then. Bash saw her unease, and at least it made that false grin disappear. Jelly. I guess. He sighed, and sighed big. I'm gonna miss you. You're special. I really mean that. Jillian froze, and one memory came crashing home, the day she'd shown up to second grade after having begged thrown a fit, really her parents to let her dye her hair a vivid, neon green. She'd thought it'd make her look so magical, so special. The other kids had been merciless, of course, kids were nothing if not cruel little monsters. But the most disheartening was the side eyes she got from the faculty too, like she was one of those kinds of kids. The pigeonholing began in earnest. Mint jelly. Those two words, though she hadn't known it then, were a rope thrown into her pit. Bash saw her in the hall and made his declaration out of the blue, accompanied by a very pleased and self-amused grin. When Jillian had just scrunched up her brows in confusion, he'd flicked the tip of her hair. Looks like mint jelly. I love mint jelly. Jillian. Ha. Thank you. It had been all she could say. You're as welcome as you are lovely, young lady. He'd hesitated then. You know. I like marmalade too. It's a kind of jelly. His eyes danced when he winked at her, then went on his way. It took about a month before she showed up looking like an orange. From then on, through every exotic dye job of her naturally golden hair, she was jelly, and Bash was her biggest cheerleader. Hell, he'd even intervened on her behalf to get an exception for hair and a few other things into the uniform rules. Everyone still had to wear the lame outfits, but after what Bash and Jelly got done, the students could at least be somewhat expressive. That went a long way towards her making some real friends. It had been rough to see the disappointed look on his face when, in 10th grade, she said that the nickname was too cutesy. Of course, looking back, her case was a bit undercut having come from behind some nice, strawberry red tresses. Still, Bash had immediately adjusted himself and set about treating her like a proper grown-up. Until today. Until right then. Until his sudden melancholy. Until he called her special. Now she wanted to be jelly again, and for the rest of her life. Face burning, Jillian shot to her feet, dislodging the strong, comforting fingers on her shoulder. Gotta go. She swiped at her eyes before she turned away. I'm all ready, it's late, Mom will wonder. Not true and didn't matter. She had to leave. Needed to. Bash didn't make a peep as she fled. Coincidentally, after she got home, Jillian made it all the way into her bedroom without her mom or dad making one either. No. The peeping came later. Underscore 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 underscore. Tammy swiped away a stray lock of blonde hair to wipe the sweat from her brow with a towel as she turned off the TV. An hour of aerobics only produced a light sheen, nothing like what came from the block she spent in the gym earlier that day. She chuckled to herself as she made her way to her bedroom, patting her washboard abs proudly. Pays the bills. She hesitated briefly, frowning. If someone could read her mind, that thought would have made her seem like a prostitute, not a personal trainer. Problem was, Tammy was in the midst of one of her rare moments of clarity. Trainer? Me and the owner both know I'm there as eye candy for the men and false advertising. G for the middle-aged women. Her painted-on booty shorts and suspiciously ineffectual sports bras were more than enough evidence of how she actually earned her salary. That she'd been dedicated to a look but don't touch directive at this gym only partially negated the whole prostitute label. In the end, she was selling her body, no two ways about it. After that little time out, though, Tammy shrugged. Who cared? She was basically a model, and no one called them hookers, or whatever. Jillian had a roof over her head, and Chad never said anything. He knew the deal. Her husband did what he had to, and so did she. If there was a little niggle in the back of her head, one that had been there for years and years, well, so what? Fuck it. Jillian? Tammy knocked on her daughter's bedroom door when she heard a noise from inside. Honey? When did you get home? The sudden lack of all noise for a good 30 seconds told Tammy that Jillian was in a mood, and she sighed. Damn it, it's Wednesday. What the hell? Usually the girl was a lot better on the weekdays. Great, in fact. Like an actual happy kid. It was the weekends that were reserved for the teenage angst. In yet another rare moment, Tammy closed her eyes and gently rested her head on the closed door, feeling suddenly exasperated. This isn't how it was supposed to be. The sound of footsteps gave her enough warning to pull away and keep from falling on her face when Jillian opened the door. Hey Mom. Yeah, I got home an hour ago, and you guys didn't. The girl just shrugged. Never mind. Anyway, here. She held out a piece of paper to her mother. Tammy took it, and while she was scanning it, Jillian scratched her head, sheepishly. I kinda did stuff that kinda pissed people off. You're suspended? Tammy's own green eyes flew wide open in outrage, and Jillian gasped. She actually, audibly gasped, like a cartoon character. How the hell can something like this happen? Is this going to keep you from graduating? Mom? Jillian looked just so confused, but Tammy found herself unable to unclench even a little bit. It's not all that. It is all that. Tammy fumed and started shaking that piece of paper furiously. What happened to that guy you know? The secretary that you said is nice. Why didn't he do something about this? SEC. Jillian just shook her head. You mean, Bash? Mom, he's a guidance counselor. I've told you that like a million. Tammy snorted. Bash. The hell kind of name. She trailed off, then settled herself. I want to talk to him with you. Tomorrow. If he's a guidance counselor, he'll have visiting hours, right? Visiting hours? He's not in a hospital, Mom. Jillian threw a hand out and waved it dramatically. And why, after almost 12 full years of me going to the same school, do you suddenly want to meet him? You never did before. Fuck, I can count on one hand the number of times you even met with my teachers. Language. Tammy gave the admonishment absently, as she was barely even hearing her daughter's words, having decided enough was enough. Chad. She bellowed down the stairs to announce her impending arrival. We need to talk. If she'd had a mind to look, she would have seen Jillian's exasperated facepalm as she trailed behind her mother. Sorry, Dad. Jillian got her message out first as she and Tammy emerged into the man of the house's oasis. His special space away from it all. Chad looked up at the two women in his life like a trap had suddenly been sprung on him. His tall, fit frame eased back in his desk chair warily, away from the computer he'd been tapping away on, and he shifted his face between his wife and daughter while running a hand through his own pale hair. Okay, so what's this all about? Suspended. Future ruined. Death and despair. It all came tumbling out at once, despite how hard Tammy tried to calm herself and stay focused. She had a problem with jumbling emotions and how, that seemed to always end tragically. Or at least semi-tragically. Even if the stakes in this instance were relatively low, she still felt like she'd failed herself yet again at seeing her husband barely stop from rolling his eyes at her. Damn it, this means something. Something has to mean something. Tammy. Chad spread his arms in a helpless gesture. What's done is done. Jillian will be fine, right, honey? At a bare nod from his daughter, the man raised his brows expectantly. See? No need to stir the pot. We can't go back in time. Tammy stared at Chad, then shook her head once. I see. Suddenly, it was like a fog got blown away from in between her ears, and she looked over at her daughter like she was seeing the girl for the first time in years. Jillian, tomorrow. You, me, and Bash. I need to find out why this happened. Not a question. Not a suggestion. It was past time for this. Jillian must have figured that this was just the latest in whims from her mom, and the cold finality of Tammy's statement visibly took her by surprise. Okay. He's open, we can, She stammered, then blinked. 4 o'clock? To the side, Chad made a pleased noise, like it was all said and done. Tammy just nodded, already preparing herself for the confrontation with the man who'd failed her daughter. Past time, and hopefully not too late. Underscore 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 underscore. Jillian couldn't stop playing with her hair, curling the as of 2 days ago purple locks around a finger and tugging again and again. Mom, please, I really like this guy. When Tammy abruptly froze outside the office door and gave her daughter a wide-eyed look of concern, Jillian felt her face flush, incensed. Jesus, not like that. God, Mom, he doesn't have a perverted bone, well, you know what I mean. And he's like, old. Cool, but, really. She stopped under the glare of the woman who was pretty much the same age. Anyway, please be nice. I still don't know why you want to talk to him all of a sudden, but he doesn't know you're coming, so don't go on the attack or anything. Please, again. Thanks. Jillian didn't know how to deal with this, her mom actually giving a fuck about her life outside the house. She knew her mom loved her, she did, and the feeling was honestly returned, but the woman had always been so, out to lunch. Like, half in another world. This kind of vim was brand spanking new, and the confused 18-year-old had no tools to deal with it. She suppressed a smile then. Bash'll handle it, easy. He always knows what to say. Which was good, because her mom, apparently, either hadn't heard or hadn't cared about her plea for calm, which was shown quite clearly the second the office door was flung open. Okay, buddy, can you tell me why the hell you let my daughter get suspended for some of the dumbest reasons I've ever? Tammy stopped short the second that Bash looked up from his computer monitor. Jillian, mouth already open to apologize, choked on the words when she saw the look on her friend's face, like he'd been punched in the gut. That moment lingered, and Jillian was only aware that no one had said anything until her mom finally broke the silence. Bastion. Bash closed his eyes, let out a breath, then steeled himself. Tammy. Good to see you again. It is? Jillian's mom sounded like she was being lied to, and her voice was barely more than a whisper. Beyond that, she was still frozen, like she'd forgotten how to move. "It's you?" Bash tilted his head. "What's me?" He looked over to Jillian then, and a little grin popped into existence for a heartbeat before it disappeared. "Oh. Right. I suppose, yeah, it's me." Without being invited, without even seeming to know she did it, Tammy plopped bonelessly down onto an empty chair, heedless of the wrinkles she was putting into that smart, professional skirt and blouse she'd very obviously taken great care in picking out for the meeting. The one that screamed, "I'm dead serious." After yet another long second of staring at the woman, Bash finally acknowledged Jillian's presence. "Jelly." For some reason, hearing that silly nickname made Tammy almost choke. "Could you please give your mother and me some privacy?" He glanced at the heavily breathing woman who was completely lost at sea in front of him. "We have a lot to talk about, and you're better off not hearing it." He held up a hand to forestall her, already knowing what she'd say. "Yet. I swear, you won't be in the dark forever." Jillian was torn. She trusted Bash, but this was killing her. How did they know each other? When did they know each other? Nearly 12 years of her going to the academy without a meeting like this answered some of that, and birthed about a zillion new questions to go along with it. In the end, though, the teenager recognized that she couldn't be told anything until there was something to be told. Which was what Bash and her mom were about to figure out. Somehow. With more of that same trust, and a whole shit ton of anxiety, Jillian just nodded and got up. She cast one look back at the frigid room, and, just before she closed the door behind her, she took a last glance at her mom, and realized that the woman had forgotten she'd even been in the room. That really did nothing to help the anxiety. Underscore 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 underscore. Tammy didn't even know she'd bitten Bastion on his huge shoulder until she heard the grunt of pain roll out of his throat, then the grunt of satisfaction rattle from hers as he lifted one of her thighs exposed under her smart, bunched up little skirt and finished slamming his cock into her all the way to the hilt. The brick wall of his office was rough on her back, so she was rough on his, raking her nails in a wide swath across the bunching muscles there. Even over his shirt open so she could feel his chest on her, but not discarded. She knew she'd left a mark. Good. It was a drop in the ocean compared to tea. Mark he'd left on her so many years ago. God. Tammy moaned as she felt the first rush of climax building. Bash felt it too, her gushing, contracting channel made sure of that, and, with a growl, he clasped her other thigh and lifted her bodily off the floor. Reflexively, she squeezed his waist and crossed her feet at the ankles, her curled toes bobbing to match the pistoning ass beneath them. Phew uck. Tammy moaned as the tremors rattled her bones, and Bastion emptied himself into her in a way that brought a rush of memories through every inch of her flesh. Memories that he was sharing with her. She knew that immediately when, with a kind of sweet incongruity, her lover gently carried her over to his desk, swept aside the detritus there, and laid her down so he could look into her eyes, all while still diamond-hard within her. Slowly, almost absently, Bastion began massaging the one, oversized breast that she'd managed to free before they'd begun, taking his time to relish the feel of it once more. Of her pebbled skin and hard little nipple. Of her warmth. Of the electricity of the touch between them. It was. Kiss me, Bastion. Please kiss me. Tammy was abjectly begging, she knew that. She didn't care. He was with her once more, and he could have her any way he wanted. She gave him her body without hesitation, now she needed to show him that she'd keep going. Keep giving. His lips on hers came right along with renewed thrusting, and that was it. Paradise gained after years of it being lost. Nothing else existed for either of them then. Not even the thud of the office door closing. Underscore. Jillian burst into the girls' locker room without even knowing which door she'd slammed through. A blind run is a blind run, and instinct was the only thing that gave her feet any kind of direction. By this time of day, she'd expected whatever hidey hole she found to be empty needed it to be empty, so seeing someone standing at the mirror, playing with her silky black hair, it was jarring. Jarring, but not unwelcome. Draven, you scared the life out of me. Why'd you slam that door? Christy Park whirled to face Jillian, taking her fingers out of her half-done ponytail while her surprisingly big tits bounced in her no-nonsense bra. The lissome Asian girl didn't seem to care that she was just standing there in her underwear, though that wasn't so weird. It was a locker room, after all, and the 18-year-old had done this countless times in her years at the academy. Still, she really was very much out there. What are you still doing here? Jillian ignored the girl's question and subtly tucked her chin while fixing her gaze on her classmate. She took a step. Are you alone? Track. Christy shrugged. Christy bounced. And yeah, it's just me. I took longer in the post-stretch. She paused then, seeing something in Jillian's demeanor. Hey, about the other day. I'm sorry. I deserved you shoving me. I don't know why I mean, we were friends for years. I shouldn't have listened to Amy when she said you keep staring at me like you are now. Christy shied back a bit as Jillian closed the distance between them. What's up? Today's a day for doing the most fucked thing you can think of. That's what's up. When Jillian's final lunge put her nose about an inch from the nonplussed runners, Christy's mouth went wide at the same time as her pretty eyes prettiest in the school, Jillian had always thought, which was an opening that the purple-headed invader couldn't pass up. Her tongue in the other girl's mouth stifled a shocked squeak, but her fingers down Christy's panties brought another right back up. By the time Jillian had her other hand inside the cup of her friend's bra, the noises her prey was making would almost have been funny, if anything could have been funny ever again. If anything could have been good ever again. She would settle for satisfying, though. Good enough. Jillian fought against the pushing Christy was doing on her shoulders, curling her fingers up inside the trembling teen's twat while rubbing that magical nub with her thumb. This was a first for both of them, but Jillian, at least, had done her homework. Maybe not to prepare for this, exactly, definitely not for this setting, at least, but she was as practiced as she could be without experience. By the sudden noodling of Christy's arms and backbone, Jillian could tell that she'd passed the test. Time to graduate. Ooh, holy shit. Christy went from pushing on Jillian's shoulders to clinging to them for dear life. She'd managed to get her mouth free just enough to utter the breathy, moaning expletive, which actually brought a smile to Jillian's face for more than the obvious reason. Never heard Miss Prim swear in 12 years. Fuck yeah. She celebrated by popping one of the boobs she'd dreamed about for far too long into her wet mouth. Christy began shaking like she'd been thrown out into a blizzard. What are you doing to me? Oh. Over and over, the staccato syllables emerged, then melded into one long wail. Oh ha. And with that, Christy drenched Jillian's fingers, even as Jillian drenched her own panties. Did I just fucking come from finger banging another girl to orgasm? That was insane, but she couldn't deny the evidence when the thighs under her own tartan skirt glided together with almost no friction. Goddamn, that's awesome. Jill, you just. The accusation, about to come from Christy was aborted by yet another tongue lashing from Jillian. Still not an ounce of tenderness in it, but, by that point, Christy was primed and didn't care. All she needed was to be led. After a good 5 minutes of groping and tweaking and licking and nibbling and, well, on and on and on, Jillian lifted herself from the wooden bench on which her toy had ended up beneath her. With both young women panting and sweaty, and Christy whimpering, Jillian eyed her conquest imperiously. Hey, come by my house on Saturday. My dad will be out. Not an offer. Not a suggestion. Christy gulped, then nodded in understanding. When Jillian nodded back to seal the deal, then readjusted her uniform in preparation to leave, the puddled athlete managed to gurgle up one question. And your mom? Jillian stopped moving, then shot a look over her shoulder. I don't care. About any of them. She began walking. They just take, so I'll take two. Underscore. That Saturday, Jillian learned two things. First, and best, was that Christy's legs spasmed like she was being electrocuted when she was flat on her back and having an orgasm. The second was that her mom was absolutely terrible at conducting an affair. That second little factoid was, tragically, very much stuck in her head that day, even while Christy's perfect little nipple was very much stuck in her mouth. Ha! Oh, she it. Christy, sweaty and still twitchy, was nonetheless collected enough, barely, to run her hands through Jillian's vivid hair in appreciation. For her part, Jillian had responded to that small tenderness with a bite, albeit a light one, on the meat of her classmate's nicely rounded boob, and a plunge of no less than 3 fingers into her partner's gash. Jill. I'm still sensitive. Christy moaned and tried pushing back, but, as in the locker room days earlier, it was pointless once her nerve endings were lit. This is mine. Jillian worked her arm faster and harder under that flipped-up miniskirt, and Christy's back bowed involuntarily, thrusting her bared tits up to roll deliciously across her chest. The girl could only grunt, almost pig-like, as this surprise climax robbed her of speech. When it was done, a good minute later, Jillian propped herself up to lock gazes with Christy before bringing up her hand to take a long, slow drag of her tongue across her own slick fingers. Then she dipped her face down and did the same along Christy's sweat-sheen skin, from her navel, up to her sternum, between her trembling breasts, and along the length of her neck, right to her ear, where she pursed her lips. You don't know what sensitive means, sexy. But I've got all day to teach you. Christy groaned, partially in excitement, but nearly equally in dread. It was then, though, that she found her voice. Jill, what about your mom? When I came in, she just ran out. Is she coming back soon? Jillian remembered. It was a scene burned into her, Christy at the door, looking like a skittish fawn and wearing an outfit so salacious that she wondered if any neighbors were reporting them for hiring a prostitute, and her mom utterly oblivious to that while muttering some inanity to her daughter and scooting out of the house around what was obviously a girl showing up for sex. Every red flag in the world being ignored as easily as she'd ignored most everything all of Jillian's life. Jillian looked down at Christy, lip curled. The athlete let out a light eep in reply, then tried to push her head through the pillow beneath it. I don't want you even thinking about my mom. No one should be thinking about my... She stopped. Forget it. I'll show you what I want from you. Get ready. Christy might not have gotten ready, but she got something. A lot of something, over and over for hours. The only fly in the ointment came when Jillian brought out one of her toys. Christy, from some hidden depth, found her backbone then and refused, saying that they weren't going to have sex. Jillian briefly considered laying into the dizzy girl for being an idiot. What the fuck else had they been doing, but settled for just laying her. Let her keep her illusions, it didn't matter. They'd disappear soon enough. All illusions eventually did. Underscore 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 underscore. Tammy was lost, and she knew it. Her stable home, her stable husband, her decidedly unstable daughter, all pushed into a kind of background haze, a new kind of background haze as the weeks went by. Her excursions after work were growing more frequent, and she found herself finding excuses to be late coming home, though not invalid ones, honestly. After all, Jillian was having troubles at school, and a good mother would do what she could to address that. Meet with people that could help. Teachers. The principal. Other staff. Mrs. Draven, this problem is becoming a crisis. Tammy blinked at the shift in tone of, what was it again? Kapowski? The severe, statuesque blonde behind the foreboding desk was starting to sound more than a little impatient. We gave Jillian a second chance, dropped her suspension to 2 days, but she doesn't seem to appreciate the reprieve. The principal plucked up a sheaf of paper like she'd been itching to since the moment Tammy had walked in for this meeting. There have been reports. She sighed. Rumors, really, which is why I hope we can head things off before they become more. Rumors? Tammy frowned. Are you seriously saying that my daughter's future is in jeopardy because of high school gossip? They're credible rumors. Even I've seen, that's for me to address. For some reason, Miss. Tammy took a quick glance at the nameplate on the desk. Kowalski licked her lips absently. Must have skipped lunch, or something. In any event, you and your daughter need to have a heart-to-heart. Regulations keep me from voicing my suspicions until lines are seen being crossed. Lines? Tammy was very confused. I mean, is she starting fights? I know she had a thing with that other girl, but I thought, I'll be dealing with Christy Park. Kowalski got that distracted look again for a second, her eyes unfocusing like she was seeing something that wasn't there. You're better suited to see to your daughter's needs personally. I agree. Tammy stood suddenly, taking the principal by surprise. Apparently she hadn't expected the conversation to end this abruptly. In fact, I have a meeting with BAS. Mr. Baxter, she pretended to look at her wrist, remembered that she never wore a watch, and felt herself flush, like right now. She began moving towards the door like she was being pulled on a rope. He knows Jillian, and together we. The flush became a full-on inferno across her skin. We're doing it. You know, helping. That was pretty much all the prudence Tammy had in her, and if the other woman had a comment, or even a further thought, she had no idea, as she was out of that office and nearly sprinting towards the one she truly wanted to be in without a single look back. It was only after Bastian had made her come for the second time, and they'd settled into a slow, almost lazy fuck with her swaying gently in his lap atop his office's sofa, stuffed with his still hard member, that Tammy's head cleared enough to do the right thing. Bah! Bash! Tammy almost giggled, using that nickname seemed kind of naughty, in a way. We need to talk. The big man looked up to her face, peeling his pretty eyes from that combination of giant tits and narrow, toned core that she knew had always entranced him. Yeah? He gave one last upward thrust into his lover, then settled back down, letting her recover from her final, delicious little aftershock climax. Yeah. Tammy took a deep breath, a very appreciated deep breath, from the hum of approval and opened her eyes. We need to make a plan. Underscore. After the 10th circuit of tiptoeing past her father's office, the man finally looked up with a chuckle. Okay, Jillian. What do you need? Jesus, about time. She never felt quite free to just intrude on her dad, but she knew he'd pay attention to her if she was obvious enough that she needed him. Right then, she needed him bad. Sorry, but, can we talk? 1 second, let me. Chad tapped his chin and looked back at the monitor in front of him, clicked the mouse a couple times, then nodded once to himself. Okay. Done. He looked back at his fidgety daughter. I have a minute. What do you need, honey? For a panicked, nearly suicidal instant, Jillian actually considered blurting everything out. I'm a lesbian. The girl I was fucking ended it. I'm pretty sure she's fucking the principal now. Your wife ruined. She squeezed her eyes shut and took hold of herself. Dad, have you, been seeing anything weird about Mom lately? Weird? Honey, your mom's always been different. We both know that. But she's trying her best. Chad shrugged his shoulder. Every family has ups and downs, and, with you almost out of the house, maybe your mom is just, I don't know, feeling the years on her, or something like that. He smiled, though it did look a bit strained. She loves you, you know that. Do I? Jillian's lips puckered sourly. Dad, you need to hear this. Mom and... She gritted her teeth, then powered through. She's been bad. As she continued this long overdue conversation with her father, Jillian's heart went out to him. It wasn't his fault that he married what he married. A part of her wanted to sugarcoat everything to try to soften the blow, but that was a small part. The biggest was what screamed out for justice, because if she was going to lose the thing that had papered over her broken heart, then everyone's heart needed to be shredded right alongside. Fair was fucking fair, after all, and this evil, twisted world was not of her making. She'd never asked to be in it, and the people who forced her to be were going to regret it. Underscore. Is it him? Tammy froze with her hand on the knob of the front door to her home. The tone in her husband's voice was off. She looked at him over her shoulder, narrowing her eyes while he just stared back at her from his favorite recliner. Is what who? Chad, I don't really have time for this. I gotta get to the school. Jillian keeps getting in trouble, and I need to talk to. Is it him? Chad. 18 years, Tammy. 18 fucking years, and you still. Yes. Tammy turned face her husband fully. Yes. 18 fucking years, and I still. She raised her chin. I didn't even hesitate. She suddenly snapped her fingers. Didn't waste 1 second. Chad was trembling, and he shook his head in denial. Abruptly, he flung out his arm and swept it across in front of him. Is this a joke? We built a life together, and you're going to throw it all away for some fucking on the sly? I'm not. Not what? Holy shit, did you actually think I'd put up with this? Did you think you could have some fun, let it run its course, then plead temporary insanity so I'd forgive and forget? Tammy shook her own head then, and her perfectly coiffed golden hair danced around her head. She could see that her appearance, from the glamorous do to the skin-tight blouse, and right on down to the thigh-high nylons under the side-slit pencil skirt, was like fuel to her husband's inferno. It was all coming in a rush that she hadn't been ready for, so all she could do was say, wow. Wow. Chad grunted. A stupid word from a stupid slut. It took a good few seconds for Tammy to compose herself then. I'm going right to him. She steadied her breathing. I will always go to him. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you fucking do. Not now. Not ever. Tammy left her husband right there, sitting in that chair with the outraged ball choking his throat and stealing away any word he may have produced. Once she was past the door, she slammed it closed, then practically collapsed back against it, her legs suddenly weak. Holy hell, what am I doing? How can I make this work? Her gaze rolled across the evening sky like the answer was up there somewhere. She turned her head to take in the illumination coming from behind the gauzy drapes at one of the windows, like she was trying to see what she'd left behind back there. She took a long, shuddering breath. How will I make it right? The sky didn't have answers. The window didn't have answers. Nothing did. She did hear a crash and a bellow of rage issue from within her home, but it didn't stop her from getting in her car and peeling out hard enough to leave tire marks on her driveway. Underscore 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 underscore. From her hidden spot around the corner to the dining room, Jillian watched her father confront her mother. The exchange was quick, which was probably good, seeing as how her fingers ached after only a few seconds of her death grip on the back of a chair. So, yeah, quick, but the furthest thing from painless. For anyone. Except that psychopathic slut that her dad married. Fucking whore. Chad's enraged roar came right along with him, picking up an end table and hurling it into the big picture that hung over the fireplace, the one with the fancy frame that showed the three of them smiling and happy. The one that was many, many years old, and now was a shattered, shredded ruin. Goddamned fitting. Jillian, slowly, quietly, emerged from her shelter, inching towards her trembling father with her hand outstretched. Dad. I'm so. Chad whirled to face her, and his wide, wet eyes went flat. He watched her for a long, fraught moment, clenching his jaw so hard it was a wonder his teeth weren't cracking. Just when Jillian had worked up the nerve to try again to do what she could to help, all the life seemed to drain out of her dad, and he just fell into his chair, put his face in his hands, and shook his head over and over. No, just no. The denial of what exactly, she wasn't sure, was muffled by his palms, but he kept repeating it over and over. Can't be happening. Can't be. Not after all of it. All of it. 18 years. It was then and there that Jillian finally faced what she'd known to be true for weeks. The thing that she, for pure survival, had denied even when she'd accepted everything else around it. When she'd embraced that she was dirty and wicked by dint of genetic curse, but had run from the full breadth of that genetic curse. Well, that was done. No more lashing out like a kid. No more punishing people that didn't know or care that they were being punished. They'd know, she'd know, and then. Her plan, such as it was finalized the moment she touched her father's trembling shoulder, and he jerked away like she'd stabbed him. Jillian settled her own quavering lip, wiped her eyes, and followed the path her mother had taken. Followed it all the way to the end. Underscore 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 underscore. Tammy's head hung as she made her way down the shadow-draped hallway towards the light of Bastian's office. The skin of her face still tingled from where she'd washed her tears away in the ladies' room, but she did feel better after the crying jag of minutes before that had forced her to flee that little haven. Not good in the slightest, but better was an improvement over abysmal. It was strange to be here, at this moment, when old lies and new lies were getting ready for a head-to-head brawl to end all brawls. When the choice of whose pain was going to win was being decided, and probably decided without much of a say on her part. Just like always. No. Tammy wanted to slap herself. Whatever else happened, that shit was done. The capitulation. The excuses. The burying her head in the sand and pretending that everything that happens to her is everyone else's fault. The one she loved more than anything deserved better from her, and she was finally going to give it. Finally going to grow the hell up. Finally going to fix it. Well, are you just going to sit there and keep lying to me? Jesus fucking Christ, Bash, tell me the truth. Are you? Right outside Bastian's office, Tammy froze. Almost literally. It was like all the blood had drained from her, leaving her a block of ice. Jillian, oh God, she heard me and Chad. And a whole lot more, she knew it for sure right then. Hell, she and Bastian probably hadn't hidden a damn thing from her this entire time. Shit, what do I say? What do I do? Into the abyss. Forward was the only way, Tammy told herself. Then told herself again. She kept repeating it, even as she eased the door open. You don't know what you're asking. Standing next to his desk, Bastian was holding his hands up apologetically while weathering the palpable fury radiating off of Jillian, who was also upright and leaning towards him like she was fighting a hurricane. Jelly, it's all kinds of. Don't call me that. Jillian screeched, snatched up the cheap snow globe on the desk, and shattered it on the ground between them. Bastian reeled like he'd been slapped. You're a fucking liar, a fucking wife-stealing piece of shit, and a fucking monster because you've been laughing at me pretty much my whole fucking life. How could you do it, Bash? The tears were fully streaming down the teen's face then, her entire body was twisted up in misery, and the blonde roots of her undyed hair made it seem like her head was on fire. How could you do all it? Be everything. She stopped herself, quivering. How could you play with me like that? Please, oh God, just tell me. If you ever had one genuine feeling for me, just. Tammy's little sob was enough to derail her daughter's plea, and the girl spun her way at the sound, eyes ablaze. Jillian, sweetie, we're so. We. Jillian nearly spit. We, huh? The slut and the shitbag. She gave out a short bark of a laugh, bitter and rueful. My fucking mother and father. At that last word, she turned back to Bastian, leveling judgment on him with all the gravitas of a victim of the worst tragedy ever perpetrated. Don't even try to deny it. You knocked up my mom and left Chad to pick up the pieces. Baby, no. Tammy shook her head, ready. She'd realized where her daughter was going, and, tragically, had to set her straight. Bastian, he's not. Another little sob escaped. Chad really is your father. I'm sorry. Jillian jerked her head back and forth in denial. No. No fucking way. She stabbed a finger in the nonplussed man to the side. He has to be. Nothing else makes sense. Why would you just jump on his cock like that? Why did Dad know it was Bash you were cheating with without me telling him? God, Mom, are you some kind of fucking nymphomaniac? Jillian Draven. The plaintive tone was gone from Bastian. Stop. You're better than this. What have I always told you? Somehow, by some miracle of the divine, or years of reinforcement. Jillian responded. Jillian stopped. You said, always said, not to refuse. She sighed, then sat down. Only crazy assholes refused to hear both sides. She let out a long breath and waved a hand, almost in defeat. Fuck it. Fine. Whatever. Nothing really matters anymore now anyway. She braced an elbow on the arm of her chair and put her forehead in her hand. Explain it all away. Tammy took a step, arm outstretched, yearning to make contact with her child. Jillian practically snarled at her, looking ready to bite her fingers off. Bash can tell it. I don't know what you even are. Tammy. With abject misery, Tammy just nodded and sealed her lips shut, then prepared herself to feel even worse. As she took another chair, she shot a look to Bastian, one filled with every ounce of hope she had left. He tried to reassure her with his eyes, but the result was anemic. Neither knew what was going to happen then, but they were running pretty low on optimism. Nevertheless, Bastian plowed ahead and sat down too, facing Jillian fully, close enough that only inches separated their knees. It was good that the team didn't pull away, but that was about the only concession she made as she watched her mentor try to fix everything. Jelly. I'm not your father. He squeezed his eyes shut, steeled himself, and went on. But I should have been. From Jillian's reaction, he had her attention, at least. Underscore 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 underscore. 18 years ago. Bastian was honestly having trouble even processing what he was hearing. He could see Tammy in front of him, clenched hands wringing over her stomach, eyes darting every way but towards him, mouth moving and moving and moving. He saw it all, and heard all the noises, but the problem was that his mind was too busy with its bombardment of images to make any sense of it. Seeing that cute girl move in next door. Sharing their first kiss in 5th grade. Both reveling in the envy of everyone around them when they officially went steady their freshman year. The first night of lovemaking, immediately followed by the first morning, then the first afternoon. Her actually fainting when he proposed. The wedding to beat all weddings. 5 minutes ago. Pregnant? Bastian finally found his voice. Tammy. Tammy, how? He felt his eyes begin to itch. Jesus, why? Bastian, oh God. I was so wrecked. When we got the news about your condition, I couldn't. I didn't know how to wrap my head around it. Tammy reached up and cupped his cheek, sniffling. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to us. Nothing's supposed to happen to anyone. Bastian jerked back, away from her. My sperm doesn't work, that's not my fault. It's not anyone's. Hell, idiopathic male infertility is just fucking Dr. Code 4, who the hell knows? Tammy nodded, but didn't try to get any closer. I know. It wasn't right that I couldn't have your child. It's not fair. Tammy, you're not explaining a damned thing. We talked about adoption, or IVF, or anything but you. He waved at her for the time being flat-stomached, then ran a palm down his face in frustration. Did you lose your mind? How did you think this was the answer? Again, Tammy started looking everywhere but at him. It happened slowly, I suppose. She gave a small, chagrined shrug. Chad? Bastian felt the blood rush into his face. My fucking cousin. You got knocked up by the guy that you know has wanted to bang you rotten since the first time he felt his little prick get stiff? Tammy began trembling. At the gym we talk, he's not like the jerk he used to be. He grew up, and he was understanding, and when I would cry, he never, tried anything but being nice. She grimaced. It seemed like it wasn't the worst idea. Just one time, like a roll of the dice. Me and him have a completely loveless session, and you and I could maybe have a baby that wasn't just me, but at least a little bit you too. Only one single, solitary try, and if it didn't work, then it really wasn't meant to be. He made it sound so reasonable. So clinical. She seemed to shrink then, but she did finally look back to him from beneath her lashes. It was what I wanted to hear, and I didn't let myself hear anything else. It felt like a way to spit in a cruel universe's eye, and when it worked, I convinced myself it was okay. She swallowed and squeezed her eyes shut. Right up until a few minutes ago, when it finally dawned on me what I had to say out loud. Roll of the dice. Bastian could hardly believe that 4 words could tear a heart out. Sweaty gym rats with slick rippling muscles thrusting and grunting and moaning and telling each other that they've never felt anything like this before and going at it again, and it being better the second time and the greatest thing ever the third time. Bastian nearly crumbled under the onslaught of his backstabbing imagination, so he decided to focus on the true attacker, the backstabbing wife that he'd always been absolutely sure he was going to grow old and die with. Tell me something, Tammy. Look at me and tell me if you think those fucking dice came up in your favor. Tammy did look, and that was when she finally, completely shattered. No. Bastian, no, please. P.L. Ease, don't do this. I'm not. I won't try to justify it. I did a stupid thing, the worst thing I could ever have done to you, and there's not an excuse ever invented that can fit. I was jumbled up and I was drowning because I didn't know how to handle my perfect world being shook, so I reached for the wrong lifeline. It should have been you I grabbed onto. I will always know that now. She hiccuped out a sob. I'll always reach for you. You're my heart. Don't go. Please, please, oh God, please give us a chance. Bastian watched her, listened to her plea, felt her anguish wash over him, and then he shattered too. He'd been wrong and she was right. Some things were supposed to happen, and raising the love child of the woman who'd been everything to him wasn't one of them. Us. That said it all, really. I may be your heart, but your soul is there. He pointed to her stomach. And there's no part of me in that shriveled, sad little thing. The wails that battered into the back he turned to her would echo in Bastian's dreams for years. Through the dissolution of their marriage, through his exodus from the town they'd grown up in, through the endurance of months upon months of her attempts to contact him and win him back, Bastian thickened the walls he was building around himself until it was a fortress of Arctic ice. Even when he was told by the remaining family he kept in touch with that Tammy had married Chad, he was immutable. Immovable. Immune. Underscore 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 underscore. Back in the office. Until I took this job and, completely by accident, or fate, or whatever, until I saw you, Jelly. Until I looked out over that gaggle of first graders 12 years ago, was hit by that smile, those green eyes, and knew that you were the child of the woman I never stopped loving. Those aforementioned eyes were positively gushing by then, and Jillian could only give little shakes of her head as Bash kept talking. I can't hear this, I can't handle this. I made a promise to myself that I'd do whatever I could to make up for. That was it. Jillian shot to her feet then, not even knowing herself what was going to happen next. What that was, it turned out, was a full-body shove into Bash's broad chest that rocked him back in his chair. Goddamn you, Bash, you became my fucking father. She screamed at him and gripped her violet hair in desperation. You were the one who helped me and prodded me and guided me and listened to me and let me cry and laugh and held me, you were there. Every fucking day. I loved you so fucking much, and now you're telling me it was all because you miss my mom and feel guilty that you ran away? Fuck you. In a flash, before she knew he was even moving, she was within Bash's huge arms, being crushed against his chest while her fists beat weakly on his back. Jelly, no. Not that. Never that. The whole world can burn around us, and I'll stay with you till the last spark dies out. He pulled back enough to put a bit of space between them, then tilted her chin up to lock eyes with her. I'm a sorry stand-in for the father that should have been there for you fully, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you're the daughter that I was always meant to have. Jillian wanted to stay there, in that embrace. She wanted to bury her face in his big chest and live there forever, but she found that her body had other ideas, specifically her arms, which were pushing him away, slowly but firmly. somehow seeing it as an opportunity because of course she would. Tammy stepped up and wrapped her own arms around Jillian's waist from behind, holding her like she'd done so many times as an innocent, ignorant child. "Baby, I can't imagine how hard all this has to be on you." The woman sniffled and gave a little, half-choked laugh in her ear. "Maybe as hard as the life you had to live with me and Chad, I suppose. A mom that never accepted the existence that her choices led to, and a dad that only pretended he'd gotten what he wanted. It had to have been a nightmare, and I wish, oh God, I wish I could take so much back and do everything right." "Mom!" Jillian groaned out the word, and it felt like a jagged ball of metal was tearing free from her throat. Tammy just squeezed her tighter. "But I did do something right. I had you." Gently, Jillian was prodded to turn, and she went with it like she was on autopilot. Staring into her mom's weepy eyes made hers water up all over again. "My daughter. The greatest daughter I ever could have asked for, and I don't regret that for one single, solitary instant." Jillian didn't have it in her to rail and scream anymore, so she just staggered over to a wall to lean against it, eased but ready for whatever. She took in her mom and Bash, watched them instinctively reach out and entwine their fingers together, and sighed. "Christ, what does this even mean?" Surprisingly, or maybe not, they seemed ready for the question. By some unspoken agreement, Tammy was the one who answered. "Honey, I won't go back to Chad. I can't. Not when I'm finally with." Her hand squeezed again, then she slipped it out of Bash's with visible reluctance. "Chad, goddamn, he manipulated and went at me when I was vulnerable and used my desperation to get me to play house with him." She cut off her rant and took a quavering breath, then focused back on her offspring. "But Bash and I, we have no expectations for you. There's no fairy tale ending where you run off with the good, kind, virtuous parents that you've been looking for your whole life. God, I hate it, but you have to. It's a choice of which cracked and broken people you want to be with." Her eyes flicked away as her voice lowered. "If any of us underscore 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 underscore." What happened after that was like watching a movie. Jillian saw herself say something about truth, whatever the hell that was, saw herself dash out of that office, saw herself jump into her old beater and race back to her house, and saw herself hunt frantically for her father until she saw herself standing in front of him, looking down as he lay bunched nearly into a ball on his bed. Then she heard the question emerge that was as horrible as it was necessary. "Did you ever want me, or did you just really want to fuck my mom?" Chad was still for an excruciatingly long time, long enough that she almost sliced off another sliver of her soul to ask the question again, but he finally emerged from his catatonia to look at her. "You know. I saw it, once." Jillian gritted her teeth. "Dad, just answer." "Bastion. At your school. I showed up late to one of those functions that your mom never wanted to come to with me. With us together in public. I think it was 2nd grade, or 3rd. Something like that. A long time ago. I saw the two of you together, saw him hug you, saw you laughing and looking up at him like." Chad closed his eyes and laid his head back on the pillow. "I saw. And that's why I stopped coming around. That was the day I gave up all the nice little stories I'd been telling myself." "Coward." Jillian leveled the final judgment right then and there. "Cowards, all of them." A father that gave up trying when his lies to the object of his obsession didn't create a magical, wonderful life of a princess daughter frolicking merrily while he was fucking the woman of his dreams every day. A mother that checked out of reality when her lies to the man she'd always loved didn't produce the happy ending she thought she'd always deserved. A surrogate parent that never let himself give more, be more, when the lies to himself were replaced by fear of the reckoning that truth would bring. "Fuck all of you." Jillian rasped out the final goodbye, and Chad couldn't have cared less. Didn't even twitch. Fine. Hell, it was almost poetic. It definitely was fitting that one of the reasons she even existed was this pathetic waste of a skin bag. Everything that had put her in this shit world was shit itself. It wasn't just Christy. The one thing that had made her happy any time recently, throwing her over for a woman that was obviously using her. Jillian knew that there was no way forward in this place, no shining rope that could be lowered into her pit this time. No way out. Every inch of her burned, her eyes, her chest, her skin itself, but what burned most of all was her need. The need to be gone. To escape. It was incontestable, so she didn't even try. Underscore 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 underscore. Something made Tammy Baxter glance at the window to her warm home, and she caught her reflection in it, backlit by the fire from the hearth nearby. Watching the snowfall juxtaposed with the image of herself produced a little smile, and she ran her fingers through her hair. Soon enough the white up here will match the white out there. She glanced over to where Bash was snoozing in his chair and nearly laughed out loud. Was it vain to wonder when she'd go completely Snow White when her own husband had already passed that milestone a good year or so ago? Well, a little vanity was all right. She'd spent so many years working hard at keeping herself looking good for him, despite a never-ending stream of assurances that it wasn't necessary. Was it any wonder that the instinct was more than a bit settled into her bones by that point? I made sure to look good for my other husband too, and look where that got me. Tammy shook her head. It had been an eternity since she'd thought of Chad, and even now it wasn't really him that was the focus of her dark musings. No, it was the loss. What she couldn't hold on to when the bubble of their fucked up life had finally popped. What had shadowed the happiness she'd regained with the man she truly loved. What she could never divest herself of. The guilt. There, at the window, it was definitely movement that had caught her eye before. Someone was at the front door, but wasn't knock. King. Tammy frowned, then nudged Bash. Not that his little snores weren't adorable, but she needed him. My love, there's someone here. Tammy jerked a thumb at the front of the house. And they're shy. Bash blinked, then chuckled. Probably Tim. He's 13, and still acts like that same 7-year-old that never thought you meant it when you said you'd always have cookies for him. Tammy joined his laugh. You think he wants cookies? Nah. Bash couldn't stop grinning. Well, not the type you mean. I caught him and Kendra holding hands the other day walking past the house. I think he's here for advice from the old neighborhood grandpa. Tammy beamed. Oh, that's so cute. If she had a small, little pang at the word grandpa and all that it wasn't saying, well, she was long skilled at reconciling what she wished were true with what she knew was true. Better late than never. Okay then, you fire up the anecdotes and I'll fire up the oven. Let's see if we can't send him home happy, one way or the other. Tammy got up and went to the door, humming. Wouldn't it be funny if Kendra showed up at the same? Whatever would or wouldn't be funny fell away entirely the second that Tammy saw who was out there, still working up the courage to knock. Still alive. Mom. A flick of the eyes over Tammy's shoulder brought a little tug of the lips to that otherwise terrified face. Bash. The second name was said with a whole hell of a lot of relief. Oh God. Jillian. Tammy could only breathe out the words, afraid that anything more said, with any more volume, would make the vision in front of her vanish. Jillian, her mature face lined and her thin features pinched, was nonetheless as beautiful to Tammy as the last time she'd seen her daughter, decades before. Neither woman seemed to have no idea what to say, so Bash's rumbling basso served to break the spell very handily. Jelly. Come inside. He stopped to compose himself. Please. Jelly? That's a kind of funny name, Mommy. Tammy nearly fainted at the sight of a cherubic little face peeking out from behind Jillian's legs with its scrunched up nose on the verge between laughter and disbelief. Her daughter saw it and gave a sheepish smile. It is, baby, but I've always loved it. She looked at Tammy, then at Bash. And I really want to hear it more. You will. Tammy stepped aside and gestured for Jillian to come in, with her grandchild in tow. As long and as much as you'll ever want. Without warning, Jillian threw herself into her mother's arms, threatening to crush those aging bones. Mom, oh God, you don't know. She began outright bawling into Tammy's shoulder. My life, It's been so fucking awful. Tammy watched the snow falling in the moonlight, silver on silver blanketing everything. It doesn't matter. There's nothing you can say that will make us turn you away. She softly closed the door behind the young one, then pulled back, cupping her daughter's cheeks with both hands. You are our daughter. Bastian was there then, and the three-way embrace threatened to bring all of them down to the floor. He summed it up nicely with his ladies in his arms. Finally. Today is day 1. He gave a wet laugh. The first day of forever.